Hello everyone, and welcome back to Strategic Labs, the channel where we deeply analyze the ideas, narratives, and strategies behind the documents. We are Sarah and Mark. Today we are going to dive into the material we have on the table. Before we start, please leave a like, share the explainer, subscribe to the channel, and remember to check the description for the links to access the original material.
That's right, and today's dive is going to be incredibly revealing. We're looking at a structural mechanism that operates quietly in the background of our daily lives, literally draining value right out of our wallets. And here's the kicker. It's not some random accident of the market. It is a deliberate policy choice.
Now, to be clear, the analysis in this explainer is based entirely on the book Milei's The Reform Blueprint, 18 Principles for Leaders and Citizens Who Demand Results by Max Basil. You can actually grab a copy on Amazon using the link in the description. For this deep dive, we are focusing exclusively on Chapter 3.
Exactly. And the core thesis of Chapter 3 is captured perfectly in this idea. Inflation is an invisible tax that hits the poorest hardest by eroding purchasing power. The author makes a really compelling case that inflation isn't just some unpredictable weather event in the economy. It's actually a highly regressive tax.
So let's kick things off by unmasking what the book refers to as the hidden tax, and really dig into how this heist operates behind closed doors.
Yeah, because it happens far from the public eye, completely bypassing normal checks and balances. It's fascinating, honestly.
Let's clearly define what we're talking about here. Because, the most dangerous taxes aren't the ones you see on your paycheck. They're the ones that alter the fundamental value of the money you're already holding. This hidden tax is basically unchecked monetary expansion.
Right. Governments essentially use this as a shortcut. When they refuse to balance the budget, or they just don't want to make the hard political choices to cut spending, what do? They just print more money.
Exactly. And by printing that money, they're draining the purchasing power of the currency already sitting in your pocket. It's a way to fund government deficits without ever having to pass explicit legislation asking citizens to pay more. It's a backdoor funding mechanism, plain and simple.
Think about the stark contrast here with visible taxation. Income tax, sales tax, property tax, these are debated openly, right? Politicians have to actually vote on them, and we as citizens can hold them accountable at the ballot box if we think those taxes are just too high.
Absolutely, but this hidden tax of inflation, it silently drains value from households without ever requiring a single vote. It just happens. You go to the grocery store and suddenly your money simply buys less. The government gets to spend that newly created money first, while you are left holding a significantly devalued currency. It's pretty wild when you think about it.
So the critical question we have to ask ourselves and really break down for everyone listening is, how does this monetary expansion actually work mechanically?
Yeah, it's so easy to just casually say, oh, they print money. But the actual mechanism of central bank monetization is a very specific structural chain reaction. We really need to understand it to see why it's so damaging to the everyday person.
Okay, so here's the brutal mechanical cycle the author lays out. It all begins with deficit spending, meaning the government wants to spend more than it actually collects in revenue. To cover that gap, the central bank steps in and prints money, injecting massive liquidity into the system without actually increasing real economic output.
Right, there are no new goods or services being created. It's literally just more paper chasing the exact same amount of stuff, which, as we know, leads directly to prices spiking because market expectations become totally unanchored. And finally, wealth redistributes. And Mark, this last step is where the real damage is done.
Absolutely crucial point. Looking objectively at who actually wins and loses in this mechanism, the losers are painfully clear. Fixed income earners, pensioners, wage workers, and the poor who spend most of their income on basic necessities. They just can't hedge against rising prices. Meanwhile, who wins? Asset holders, people who own real estate or stocks that inflate in nominal value. And debtors, especially the state itself, because they get to pay back their massive debts with money that is now worth significantly less. Wealth is unfairly transferred from savers and the working class directly to politically connected actors and large firms.
Which brings us to a massive real-world testing ground. The book pivots to a really intense case study, Javier Milei's administration in Argentina, and their absolute shock to the system.
Right. To truly understand this, the text uses Argentina as the ultimate example. For years, the Argentine Treasury relied on the central bank as its own personal ATM to finance massive deficits. The cornerstone of Milei's shock to the system was severing this toxic relationship once and for all. Under this new doctrine, they legally separated fiscal and monetary policy. The central bank was essentially prohibited from printing money to cover Treasury shortfalls. This wasn't just a tweak. This was a massive structural change, explicitly designed to kill that hidden tax directly at its source. Historically, Argentina had decades of high inflation and devastating hyperinflationary episodes. I mean, it was the direct result of total fiscal dominance. But then, in late 2023, Milei takes office, and almost immediately, central bank monetization is prohibited.
This rapid sequence of structural changes was enacted to force the state to finally live within its means. By restoring central bank autonomy, the government simply can no longer hide its chronic overspending behind the veil of inflation.
But Mark, as the book points out, you can't just turn off the liquidity tap without consequences. We have to ask, what are the brutal political costs of stopping the printing press so abruptly?
Oh, the costs are immediate and severe. When an entire system is addicted to newly printed money just to function on a daily basis, shutting it down means you're going to face intense political trade-offs and massive societal resistance.
You're immediately faced with a severe tension. On one side, you have massive short-term pain, tighter credit, the sudden loss of subsidies, a potential recession, and rising unemployment in sectors that heavily relied on state money.
Exactly. It's a really bitter pill to swallow. But on the other side is long-term price stability. The argument is that you're enduring this massive contraction to achieve the ultimate goal, restoring the real purchasing power of the citizens and ending that regressive hidden tax. It's a fundamental debate between political survival today and economic sovereignty tomorrow.
And this brings us to the concept of ending fiscal dominance. When you end monetization, the Treasury can no longer simply demand central bank bailouts whenever they run short on cash.
Right. The Treasury is forced back into reality. They have to rely on actual spending cuts, improving efficiency, or seeking genuine market financing. The illusion of free money is entirely shattered, and that forces a level of fiscal discipline that was previously just ignored.
Now, the book impartially reviews how Milei's administration actually managed the inevitable backlash from all this. Because the groups that previously benefited from those inflationary distortions, vested interests, certain unions, subsidized industries, they fought back incredibly hard.
For sure. The strategy involved clear, unvarnished communication to the public about exactly why the pain was absolutely necessary. They paired that with targeted social buffers to protect the most vulnerable from the immediate shock. And they did all of this while strictly resisting the immense pressure from vested interest to just turn the money printers back on.
So what does this all mean for us? The book transitions into a blueprint for citizens, shifting the power back to the audience and discussing how we can hold power accountable. Exactly. How do we prevent this hidden tax from ever returning? The author outlines two critical data points. These metrics shift power back to the public, turning abstract, confusing economic policy into a governable, measurable reality.
Yeah, if you want to know if your government is actively stealing your purchasing power, you don't need a PhD in economics. You literally just need to track these two specific, highly transparent numbers.
Metric 1, monthly inflation. And we're talking monthly, not just annual, because it provides near real-time feedback on price dynamics. And metric 2, base money growth.
Tracking these two provides the ultimate early warning system. If base money is growing but real output isn't, you know the government is slipping. You know they're quietly expanding the money supply, and inflation is right around the corner.
Just to clarify the economic logic here, base money growth is the upstream driver. The monetary base serves as the anchor for the broader money supply.
When the monetary base expands without an equivalent growth in national output, severe price pressure inevitably follows. It's the simple physics of the market. More money chasing the exact same goods equals higher prices. So watching the base money is basically watching the government's hands.
I absolutely love this quote from the source material. When citizens can track simple metrics, policy stops being abstract and becomes governable.
It really hits the nail on the head. It emphasizes the vital importance of transparent reporting and independent audits. If the central bank is legally forced to publish these numbers clearly, it maintains their credibility and drastically raises the political cost of trying to sneak in a hidden tax later on.
So, as we move into our final reflections, we have to look at how we can actually escape this trap for good. As we pull this all together, we really have to recognize that escaping this trap requires a very long-term view. Sustaining this blueprint isn't a one-and-done deal. It requires unyielding institutional integrity, transparent oversight, and continuous public engagement.
Inflation control is definitely not a one-time fix. It requires a constant, vigilant defense against political backsliding. Because, the very moment the public looks away, the temptation for politicians to start printing money again to fund their grand promises is absolutely overwhelming.
Which leaves us with a highly provocative thought to chew on. Will these uncompromising structural reforms actually outlast the political resistance over the long haul?
That is the ultimate question. Can a democratic system sustain the short-term pain required to permanently sever the Treasury from the printing press? Or will intense electoral pressures eventually force a disastrous return to the hidden tax?
The definitive message that Max Basil leaves us with in this chapter is incredibly profound. Inflation is not destiny. It is a deliberate policy choice.
Exactly. It is a choice made by leaders. But with disciplined leadership and active, informed citizen oversight tracking those key metrics we discussed, we can permanently dismantle the hidden tax. We absolutely do not have to accept the erosion of our wealth as an inevitability.
We've reached the end of this analysis. If this explainer added value to your day, please leave a like, share it, and subscribe to Strategic Labs so we can keep deconstructing narratives.
Remember to check the explainer description. See you in the next analysis.